one brush and one palette to the perfect 90s smoky eye. All right, first things first, I'm going to use the Supermodel shade of the 90s palette from Vive Muse. Actually, I don't know the Vive Muse is technically the name anymore. I'm using the fluffy side of the brush to deposit the majority of this grey pale colour across my entire lid before moving on to a darker contrasting shade. All right, then I'm going to do the same on the other side, tapping it in. I don't have any primer on, nor do I have anything on to sort of make it stick other than just a little bit of whatever emollients is on my lid. These powders are really, really forgiving in my opinion and don't sort of catch and get sticky, but also I'm using a light shade, so I'm not playing with fire in that respect. Like, it can't really go too wrong, but I'm obsessed with this color even as a wash all by itself. Then I'm going to use the small side of this brush on the shade Low Rise and start shading that around the eye at the outer corner first, just on the bottom before I move it up to the top. Very easy, very simple. Smudgy little brush. You don't have to have this brush. Any little brush will do. This is the KJH number 5 brush, and then I'm going to move it up to the top so that I start to create a bit of a smoky upper lash at the outer corner. And I'm just sort of tapping and stippling it on. You can also do this where you just tap it on and you don't blend it. You just let it chill for a sec, and then you can flip the brush and blend it with that side. And then actually with that side, same shade, I'm just going to put it underneath that forward part of my brow, flip the brush, and then blend. This is kind of my favorite place to sort of start adding shadows to the face, is underneath the forward part of my brow. Flip the brush, apply the same color. I didn't pick up more, I just used what was on my first pickup amount. And then with that same shade, I'm just going to go straight in with the fluffy brush and start shading just above my crease. Sort of just looking straight into the mirror and then going right underneath where my brow bone is. Depending on where your brow bone is, you might want to go a little bit higher than me. You also might want to go a bit lower than me. I'm just sort of getting it on for the moment. I'm not really worried too much about the blend. Sort of just pressing and stippling, or I'm just tapping and softly moving to the left and to the right. I'm not doing any big windscreen wiper moves. And I'm being quite cognizant of my face position, because if I do any of this, or if I do any of this, it's not going to be where I want it to be. So I'm just blending it, blending it, blending it, moving it around, and then when I'm ready, I can start stretching it out to the outside of my eye towards my hairline, like so. I actually have a question. Do you find that information in this format from tutorial content is better when it's just a sweep with no talking and just sort of informational steps with no speaking, and it's just sort of a vibey video with the progress happening before your eyes? Or is this sort of more slower, transitional education more helpful? Because I wonder which ones you actually try. All right, so now I'm just going to really softly, carefully blend, because I've got soft skin on my eyelids because I'm 42. If I blend too hard, I'll get these creases in my eye, but I just want to make sure that I'm not blending to create more marks and creases, but I'm blending to make it smooth. And if I ever want to, I can just buff out a little bit of the powder that's inside this brush and have a clean slate to then blend without actually moving more product around. I'm going to take the shade Skimp, which is this quite bright one, and I'm just going to go right in that inner corner, start sort of blending it towards where I first started with that grey, for a bright pop of colour, or a pop of light in the inner corner even. There's a lot of red in my lip. I'm going to take that same shade Skimp and just dull down the red that's in the lip, just so that I can not focus on the fact that my red in the lip is distracting me from my cool toned eye. Okay, I'm going to use the shade Soot, which is the dark grey, and then just apply that right over everything that I just did, making a big V. So now I've got a transition of softer greys underneath this more strong grey. These powders are so beautiful and soft, and you really don't need very much. Flipping the brush around to just flick that up toward the tail of my brow, and then blending it in ever so slightly. My brush is barely moving my skin, and that's kind of the way that I want it. I can take a little bit of what's on that brush just under the eye, because there's always something on the brush from your blend that will be able to be used somewhere else on the face. I could even take it under there to make it a bit darker. I need to mattify my skin, so I'm just going to tap on a decent amount of pressed powder just to sort of have more of a velvety look, because I feel like it's very of the time. Its skin wasn't really dewy, I don't think, in the 90s. So this is just a very matte face powder just around the eye and cheek and lip, to border it. I could even put it over the eye and make it a little bit more dusty. And actually a little bit of that setting powder on the mouth to make the lip a little dusty as well, just to make it more matte and a little bit less pigmented. And if I ever want to soften my height of my eyeshadow, I'll just take my setting powder that I just used and just sort of blend it into the edges of the details that I've created. And every time you blend, you might want to go back in with more. I'm just using more of that darkest shade again, because sometimes when you blend, it's kind of taking it off, and you might want to go back in with a little bit more. Now I'm using that shade Skimp one more time, which is this one, this sort of white gray. It's almost like a cloud color. I'm just going to pop that right in the middle of the lid where it's the brightest, and just bring it up toward the brow bone a little, just for a bit more of a stark contrast. I'm going to blend this brush into a towel and just blend that darker grey back into that lighter grey, just so that there's not any hard edges before going on with mascara. Alright, this is one coat of the mascara that I'm developing, but I'm not showing you it yet. I think it's going to be pretty magical. And that's it. I hope that was helpful or interesting.